Okay, these are all what is in the category of face palettes in my collection. They are whole face palettes or blush palettes or bronzer palettes or highlighter palettes. There are 36 here. And you know, I remember there being a time where I had 14 and I was like, how does this happen? I think I only purchased maybe two new face palettes last year, but let's jump into it because I know that there's some easy ones for me. First of all, I'm going to take this one out of the face palettes drawer. The biggest reason why is because this is what is called a HD Skin Face Sculpting palette, but I literally use this, as you guys can see, for her like concealer and foundation more than anything else. Yes, I use it for contour as well, but the majority of the reason why I use this is for foundation. And if I put it in with my face palettes, I'm going to forget about it. I take it on the road with me a lot. So I am going to put it in with my foundations and move it into my foundation category because that is how I use it and it makes sense to me. So we're automatically going to move that. That said, the foundation category will go up by one, but the face palettes will go down by one. So we're not really making any movement here as far as collection and declutters. This is a blush palette that I brought back into my collection because these shades are just, you know, unique. I mean, who can say that they have like an olive toned blush in their collection? I mean, probably a lot of people. I wanted to be one of those people. This does not look good on me. And I decluttered it once, brought it back into my collection. I think I've worn it twice since bringing it back in. And I'm going to declutter it again. So, one down. This is my Tarte Blush Bazaar. You know, I did a review of this palette and it is the most viewed video, I think, on my channel. I love this palette. As you can see, it is really, really well used, but it is also really, really old. I think I bought it brand new in 2019. I do think that the powders still work really, really well. I mean, look at how pigmented this is for a 2019 blush. Like, I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. And I still use it pretty consistently, so I am going to hold on to it. This one's gonna go. I think I put this in my video of worst purchases of 2024. Like, why I picked this up, I will never know, but the blushes are super hard to pick up on a brush. They're really hard pressed. The bronzer square isn't necessarily big enough for me to get my bronzer brush into, so then I'm using a smaller brush, so then the bronzer doesn't look right on my face. Like, this highlight is the Rose Quartz that I believe is one of the shimmering skin perfectors from Becca, you know, because they bought out Becca's formulas. I don't need it enough to have a full face palette in my collection that I'm not going to use. So I am also going to declutter this palette. This is the Too Faced Turn Up the Light. And, you know, initially I maybe would have told you that I was going to declutter this, but I used this in Deck of Panning last year and really fell in love with it, specifically for this, like, almost, well, it's a glowy face powder, but it's also not like glittery, but it's got this really beautiful, like, wet effect glittery, like, highlight in it as well. I mean, this is just a really beautiful, yeah, it's just glistening, and I love it. I love it so much, so I'm gonna hold on to this. I just hadn't used it very much up until that point, which is very sad. This is a stick, a Stila like contour and blush stick, or bronze and blush stick, that I keep in this section because it belongs to blush and bronzer, and that's kind of where face palette sits for me. That said, I never think to grab for it because I'm just, I guess, confused by it. I never buy these kind of sticks. I have used it It's really not a bad stick, but I do feel like the bronzer is too orange for me. I like the blush, so maybe I stick it in with the blushes, but at the same time, do I like the blush enough or need the blush enough to keep it? I don't think so, and I'd like to like pass it on while it still has a lot of life in it. This I got in gratis last year, so well, in 2024, so I think that it still has a lot of life left in it, and I'd like to give it to somebody who will use it. This is my Charlotte Tilbury Film Star Bronze and Glow. This was the special edition Swarovski Crystal edition. I did get this in a lucky bag. I did not purchase this. This is full size, beautiful bronzer and highlight from Charlotte Tilbury that when I first got it, I thought was laughable because this highlight might have suited me, but I really did feel like this bronzer was just too light. But this is such a beautiful contour and highlight palette. I don't use the highlight very often, but when I do, I'm just so happy that I did. It's really subtle. It feels and looks like a matte in the pan, but it is just really glowy, healthy looking on the skin. So I'm going to keep that, of course. I'm going to keep both of these. This is the Natasha Denona Berry Pop Cheek Trio Blush Highlight and Blush and Highlight Palette. I really love this so much, and I love this cream blush, like it's a glowy, creamy blush. And then this one is the My Dream. Like when I got this one, I could not put it down. So I do feel like the highlighters in these two palettes are super similar, but this one leans a little bit more pinky and this one leans a little bit more champagne. So I do think there's a place in my collection for both of these palettes. So I'm going to keep them both. And since we're talking about Natasha Denona palettes, let's just talk about these two as well. This is the Bloom Blush and Glow palette, and this one is the tan, and I'm gonna be keeping both of these as well. I do love them. You can see that they're really used palettes. They're really good in a pinch. They're really good on the road. I would be sad to lose them in my collection, so I am gonna hold on to both of them as well, but they are also running a really short remaining lifespan, right? Because they've been in my collection for quite some time as well. And then I have the Natasha Denona Diamond Blush and Glow. Listen, I need to get some more use out of this guy. I do feel like I've used it pretty significantly in spurts, but not enough that you're really seeing any kind of wear and tear here. And these three up here are creams, right? They've got the little flap to keep them closed. This one I really love as a blush topper. I feel like it is too pigmented just to be like a highlight. I feel like this one is maybe a little bit too dark for me for highlights, so I sometimes use it as like a glowy bronze base, right? So I put it down and then I put like a bronzer over the top of it, and it actually shows up really beautifully underneath that bronzer and provides for like a glowy bronzer. The rest of these are just really beautiful, and I'm really happy to have them in my collection, so I will be holding on to this one as well. But again, really short lifespan, right? That's pretty old, and it's been in my collection for quite some time. This is my Complex Culture Overtime Contour and Blush Duo. You know, I really do like this. I also think that it could probably go, but I don't know. I'm going to put this into over here for now, and we'll talk about that again in a minute. This is my Touch in Sol Glowdient makeup palette. This is a highlighting palette. I love that it's got the little strips and it goes from really light to really deep, like in color. My mom gave this to me. She got it in a BoxyCharm, and I actually quite love this. This is a beautiful highlighter. It reminds me of a Super Shock formula in that it is kind of creamy without being creamy. It's just so pretty, and I don't mind for highlight these like strips of different colors of highlight being in here, because you can get a highlighting brush into these little tiny strips, and these strips are actually quite wide, right? So you can get like a pretty decently sized highlighting brush even into these strips. I really do like this palette. It works really well even on your eyes, so I will be holding on to this one as well. This is probably one of my favorite highlighting palettes. This is the Glam Glow, just called a Glow palette. This is what it looks like, and I picked this up at TJ Maxx for like $6.99. Probably best purchase that I had made at the time. I used the heck out of this. I think that you guys can see that in these two specifically. I've used them a lot. Maybe not this one. This one I do think is a little bit too dark for me. But I am going to hold on to it because I do like it and I use it. Same with this. This was also a TJ Maxx find. This is the Cover FX Rose Gold Bar Highlighting Palette. I remember when the gold bar highlighters were so big, and I don't even know that Cover FX is the one that put them out, but this one I found at TJ Maxx around that same time, and it was, I think, again, $6.99. You can see that I've used all of them. This pink one I have a wee bit of a pan in. It is too deep to wear on my face, but I wore it a lot in eye looks, and I think that's why it's got the pan in it, but I forgot it had a pan in it. But I will be holding on to this one as well. And this one will follow along in that same process. This is the Pat McGrath Divine Blush and Glow Trio in Galactic Sun. This is something that came out in a holiday set at some point, and these are two of the probably 5 different Pat McGrath blushes that I actually want to have in my collection, so it will stay for that reason. The highlight is Golden Nectar. I don't really wear it a whole lot, as you guys can see. It doesn't look very touched at all, but that being said, none of her powders really look that touched. Even the blushes in here don't look that touched, and I use them all the time. We have Divine Rose and Desert Orchid as far as the blushes go. I also have Flirtatious in a single, and there's 2 other blushes from her collection that I want but haven't picked up yet. So I will be holding on to this because 2 of the 3 products in here I use quite significantly and want to have in my collection. So that will stay. This, it's an end of the era, an end of an era. I think I'm going to get rid of this. Biggest reason why is because these bronzers are so warm. Like even this one that looks a little bit more cool tone, a little bit more neutral, is just so warm. And I don't use these, right? So this is the only one in this palette that I use, so it doesn't make any sense to keep it. Now I held onto this for years and years and years because it's just so pretty, but I think it's time. There's no reason to hold on to something that I'm not really ever going to use. So I am going to get rid of that. And this Hourglass palette, this is the Ambient Lighting Edit Unlocked Elephant palette. And this came out, I think 2-3 years ago at this point. This is the only Hourglass palette that I have ever been interested in, and the only one that I have in my collection. I do love all of these powders, so I will be holding on to this. And I just used it, no pan left behind, in one of my Deca Pannings last year, and I love it. This is gonna go. I think I'm gonna give this to my daughter. This is the ABH Aurora palette, and honestly, like, I'm just never going to use these as highlights, and I don't also need them as, you know, inner corner highlights. I mostly use these as inner corner highlight and never used these as inner corner highlight. It just doesn't make any sense to keep these, and I know my 13-year-old will love this, so I'm gonna declutter that as well. This I'm gonna keep because this is beautiful and works really well. The only color I cannot wear really is that peachy color, but then I also have used it as a like blush topper on a peachy blush, and it looks beautiful. This is the Beauty Bay Living My Best Light highlighting palette in shade Delicate, I guess. This is the light version. I don't know if they have like a deep version or not. I do love this one because it's kind of like that pinky to like silver to pinky, kind of icy, beautiful, but this one's really pretty, really light, like champagne-y color. This one is kind of a goldy color, but as I said, that one I kind of use over the top of a peachy blush, and it really looks pretty. Yeah, I think I'm going to hold on to this one. This is BH Cosmetics Weekend Vibes Bellini, and then we also have Weekend Vibes Belgian Waffle. So Belgian Waffle is the bronze and highlight palette, and this is part of the reason why I am getting rid of the Park Avenue Princess one. This is kind of the same thing, right? Except for this one does have highlights in it. The only thing is that I use all of these palettes except for that one, or all of these shades except for that one. Like I've used both of these. I've used both of these. This is supposed to be the lightest version of a bronzer, but I just find it works really well. It's kind of like matte highlighter. It also looks really good as a face powder in some instances. If there were two shades that I don't use much here, it's going to be this one and this one. But because I actually love these two bronzers, I think that they don't turn orange. I love that they're a little bit more on the cool tone side. And I got rid of the Park Avenue Princess, so I'm going to keep that. I am also going to keep the Bellini palette because I feel like these are peach tone blushes on crack. This is just a different shade range of peaches that I don't have anywhere else, and I've used all of these, and peach blushes are some of my favorite blushes to use. These ABH Glow kits I'm going to hold on to also. I have Sugar and Sun Dipped. Sun Dipped was bought for me by my daughter. This is finger swatching mostly as like eyeshadows. These two I've used with a brush, also with my fingers. Show you what those look like. Like these are the two that I wear the most on my skin from this palette, but I usually just take a brush to them. This one I love as an eyeshadow because it's just like that perfect shade of copper. Yeah, I can't wear that as a highlight, but I can definitely wear it as a shadow. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll take the two out of this one that I use the most and the two out of this one I use the most and get rid of the other two. Except for in this one, I really do use these three a lot. I hardly ever use this one. We have Starburst, Gumdrop, Marshmallow, Butterscotch, Starburst, Gumdrop, Marshmallow, Butterscotch. They're just so pretty. And I don't know, I guess I could use butterscotch on my face. I don't know. But I just don't, at one point in time, I did not love using it on my face. Clearly, this is the one that is used the most. I do think that I have some highlighter pans from like Sydney Grace that would fit in here. But I do love this one also as like an eyeshadow. I don't know. I'm going to hold on to these because I do like them a lot. Okay, Tarteist Pro Glow. This is the cream and powder like contour palette that has 4 highlights and 2 cream or 2 bronzers, one being a cream like contour and then this one being a bronzer. I don't love this palette. And it's starting to do that thing where it kind of like leaks like, I don't know, oils from the pans. And like these guys aren't really all that spectacular, if I'm honest with you. This one maybe is pretty. I think I'm gonna get rid of this. And I think I'm also gonna get rid of this because I don't know if you guys can tell, but this has never been touched. Never been touched. Like, yes, it's got finger smudges on it, but it's literally none of the powders have been touched. And I've had this in my collection for so many years. And I have a sister, a niece, a couple daughters that I'm sure would love this. So I am also going to get rid of these. Both of these came to me in BoxyCharm. These are my 2 NARS face palettes. I have the Rising Star palette. This one is going nowhere. I love this palette. Really beautiful glowy blushes. This one's a beautiful like blush topper. I wouldn't say it's a great highlighter because it is, you know, kind of deep based for a highlight for me anyways. But man, I love this blush. And I love these 2 blushes mixed together. And I love these 2. I love this palette. So this is not going anywhere. And they're super firmly pressed. So you can't even tell they're used. And then this one is the Hot Tryst. This one was my first NARS face palette, and it has seen a significant amount of use. I really love this. I think that these blushes are completely different than these ones in that these ones are really very sheer, whereas I don't think that these ones are super sheer. And I like these highlighters better than the one that's in the other palette, so I will be holding on to this as well. Pixie Hello Kitty. This is the Charming Glow Chrome Glow palette. You know, I've used several of these shades. I don't 100% love these shades, but y'all know how I feel about Hello Kitty. I do think that these will make beautiful, like, blushes, but I haven't tried them in that way yet. And ultimately, these are the 4, like, highlights that I've used in this palette the most. These two, barely. These ones I haven't used as blushes yet, but I do think that they would be beautiful blushes. I am going to hold on to that because it is what it is. This is the Smashbox Cali Contour Kit. I actually quite love this kit. It does have this guy here, which is a really beautiful, like, brown tone rosy blush. I love that so much. When it comes to also like a full-on face palette with like a face powder, I have used every single one of these powders in here, and this is another reason why I thought it was okay to get rid of that Tarte Park Avenue Princess palette, because I pull for this one 100,000 times more than the Park Avenue Princess, and that one's rather new in my collection. The Saharan Blush Volume 2 palette by Juvia's Place is Stain. I think that, you know, this is a really good blush topper. This is a beautiful glowy blush. This blush right here is probably my favorite blush in my collection. I do think I have a single that is quite similar to this, maybe a little less deep, but I love this blush. And this blush actually is a really beautiful blush, even though it looks like a bronzer. This is the Lunar Beauty Moon Prism palette. This, again, is not going anywhere. Some of my favorite blushes exist in this palette. I don't pull for it as often as I should. I did pull it into a deck of panning last year, got some really great use out of it, reminded myself why I love it so much, and I won't be getting rid of it because I love it so much. This is my Benefit Cheek Leaders Pink Squad palette. This is when Tickle came out, and it has the coveted California, which I will be keeping sheerly for that reason. California and Dallas. So this is staying, period. Danessa Myricks. This is her Lightwork Highlight palette. This was my first Danessa Myricks product, and I do love it. These obviously are way too dark for my skin tone. This makes a really beautiful blush topper, but all 3 of these are really beautiful highlights on my face. So I will keep this because I will use all of them. You can see I have used all of them. This one mostly as a eyeshadow. This one I've also used mostly as an eyeshadow, but really beautiful palette. I will keep it. And then last but not least, I do have the Lunar Beauty also highlight palette. This is the Greek Goddess highlight palette, and this is iconic and it won't be going anywhere, just saying. So I will be holding on to that. I do think I'm gonna get rid of this. I'm gonna declutter this while it still has a lot of life left in it to somebody else who can love it. I am moving one palette to a different section in my collection. I'm decluttering 8 palettes, and I'm actually surprised by that. So that leaves us with 28 palettes in my face palette collection. I'm stoked. So I would like to say that bronzers is not a problem area for me. Looking at all these, you might be able to argue that, right? That said, I brought in 8 new bronzers last year, but I only purchased 5 of those. 2 were a gift, and 1 was from FLC. I still don't think it's a problem area, but we're looking at a problem here. There are 36 bronzers that I have in my collection right now, and I think that that's a lot. These are all the creams, and the rest are powder. And I think I can make some easy decisions right off the bat. I do think that this Gigi Gorgeous one needs to go. I've kept it in my collection for far too long. It hasn't even been touched. There's no reason to keep it. It can go to a good home. I don't have, the boxes for some of these because like this specifically I don't have a box for because it came in an Ipsy box, and sometimes those things don't come in a box. I do know that there are some people that just don't care about a box. It's never been touched. It's literally never been used. So I am going to declutter that one. I am also going to declutter this. So this is just a big mess. My daughter gave it to me last year. It's the Ofra bronzer in South Beach. It was a split pan, but it broke. So then I repressed it, and I'm just truly not really good at repressing. But that said, with it repressed, it is so dark. It is such a dark bronzer, and it's just kind of flaking away. I don't know if you guys have seen that. The formula is just not super fantastic on it, and I think that a lot of that is probably because I repressed it, but it is also going to go. This one is going to stay. This is a brand new Hoola. It hasn't even been opened yet. I'm keeping that. This one is the Jumbo. This is my favorite bronzer, so I will be holding on to this one. This is Pat McGrath's Nude Honey. Really beautiful bronzer. Found that I could not put it down once I had it in my collection. Love it so much. This is a secondary favorite bronzer. I will be holding on to this one as well. Natasha Denona Contour Sculpting Powder. It's super old in my collection, but still holds a place in my heart. So there's that. This is super easy. I'm going to get rid of this. I don't love this bronzer. I don't love the color of it. I'm not 100% sold on the formula. It makes me super sad because this is relatively new to my collection. I mean, I did purchase it in 2023, but didn't get any use out of it until 2024. I purchased it in the fall VIB sale from Sephora, and I just don't love it. So I am going to declutter this cream bronzer, give it to somebody who can give it life before it is gone. I am going to hold on to this one. This is the Chanel Les Beiges cream bronzer. I love this bronzer. Mine still smells really good. It's kind of old in my collection, but don't care. I use it a lot, and I actually quite like it, and I spent a lot of money on it, so I will keep that. I'm also going to keep this one, which is this Charlotte Tilbury Beautiful Skin Sun-Kissed Glow bronzer. This is a really great like neutral tone bronzer for me, whereas the Chanel one is rather warm. This one is kind of gray toned and a little bit more of that contour shade, honestly, but I really like it a lot in conjunction with the contour or with the Chanel one, so I will be holding on to this as well. We'll be holding on to this. This is actually not in the right component. If you guys are familiar with my channel, you know that, but this is the Makeup by Mario Sculpt Stick. The component did break on it. I moved it into two separate sections or two separate components, and therefore put it in as two separate items in my collection. This is the last of them. I was able to empty one early 2024, and now I have this one that I'm working on. So the plan is to have this out of my collection by the end of the year, so I will be holding on to it as well, as it is part of my project pan. Easy ones are going to be these sticks here as well. I know who needs this many cream sticks, but like literally these three are probably my favorites. I love the Rare Beauty Bright Side contour stick, the Too Faced Chocolate Souffle Melting Bronzing and Sculpting stick is fantastic. New to me this year. These both were new to me this year. This is my favorite like contour stick of life. This is the Fenty matchstick in amber. It's just truly a perfect contour shade. So when I am contouring, this is what I pull for. So I will keep all three of those. This is new to me this year as well. This is Westman Atelier, and a brand that I have recently just started using and getting to know. So love this. We'll keep it. And then this is new to me via gift from my daughter. It's actually a really beautiful bronzing stick. It's in the shade Medium by Misho, and I found that I liked it quite a lot, so I will hold on to that. I'm not sure that I need this contour wand. I am really just not sure that I am a lover of liquid products. And whereas I loved this once before, I'm just not sure that I still love it. So I am going to hold on to it, but I am going to put it into my next Shop My Stash because I need to, nope, you know what nope, I'm going to declutter this because we should not be spending time using products that we just are not sure that we love. Just, there's that. These ABH ones, I really do like both of them. But when I think about the one that suits my skin best, it's going to be this one, which is in Rich Amber, which surprises me. This one in Tawny is just a little bit too deep and a little bit, honestly, too red. So this is Rich Amber and this is Tawny. Yeah. So we're going to keep Rich Amber. We are going to declutter Tawny. Vesca, I think, can go. This is just too warm. Too warm. It's very orange. We're going to declutter that one. LYS. I really think I remember loving this so much. But then I swatch it and it is so orange. I think I'm gonna let this go. This is the No Limits bronzer in the shade Motivate. It's their lightest one, or was their lightest one at the time. It's also, I mean, just, it's super orange. And I really do love more of a contoury shade as a bronzer for myself. I'm gonna keep Too Faced because I really like this. Works really well as a contour for me, and it's a really nice contoury shade. This is the Chocolate Soleil. It is old, but it still functions and works really well. I am also going to keep the Dior Forever Natural Bronze and Amber Bronze. I did think that this was going to be too warm for me, but I did really actually quite love it. And in the screen, it looks far less orange than it does in person. So, and you guys can see that I've used it quite a bit. The Dior on the imprint here is kind of almost gone. So really love that. The Fenty Island Ting Sunstalker Bronzer, I do think it's too orange for me. So I do think that this could go. That is just way too orange. We're going to declutter that. Lancome CE Skin Transforming Bronzer in Light. I really did love this bronzer. This will stay. This is also one of the newer ones in my collection. This is the House Labs Power Sculpt Velvet Bronzer in Light Level 4. This is kind of dark, but I can make it work for me, and I really do like the formula, so I am going to hold on to that as well. This is the Bobbi Brown Bronzing Powder in Natural. This one was quite a bit darker than I anticipated it would be, but I think it would work well for me in the summertime if I get a tan. It isn't like so dark that I can't use it. It's just a little bit darker than I anticipated because it is called Natural. It's one of the lighter shades that they have, but I will keep it because I do like it. This Hourglass bronzer is one of my favorite. This is the Ambient Lighting Bronzer in Nude Bronze Light. It will stay. It's a really nice glowy bronzer without being glittery. NARS Laguna Matte, or powder version, I guess. Of course, has to stay. This one is another new one to me. Giorgio Armani Luminizing Silk Bronzing Powder in 90, which is one of the lighter versions. I have to be honest with you, I don't 100% love this, but it's not a bad bronzer, so I will hold on to it as well. All right, now we're down to these. Marc Jacobs, Tantastic Omega Bronze will stay. I love this bronzer, even though it doesn't look like I have loved this bronzer. I do love this bronzer, so this will stay. This Juvia's Place bronzer, I love this shade of bronzer because it's really yellow toned and kind of very different from my collection. This one's a little bit warm, but I think that because this is as unique as it is, like really, I would love to take it and go through the rest of the bronzers that I keep and see if I have a bronzer that's quite this color. I would be willing to bet I don't. It is a really kind of like yellow toned bronzer, which is just weird and different, but it looks so good on my skin. So I'm going to hold on to it for that, but I don't love this shade down here. The Jouer bronzer, I like a lot. I will keep it. This one's a little too light. This one sometimes is a little too dark. I like mixing them. I also like using them individually. This one probably would look really good on me right now because I'm so fair, but this is a beautiful bronzer. I'm going to hold on to it. These 5 are what's left. If I was going to get rid of any one of them, it would probably be this one. But because this one is still super new to my collection, I mean, I've only used it a couple times. I feel like I need a little bit more time with this before I decide whether I'm going to declutter it or not. So it's going to stay. This one I actually really quite love. I mean, you guys can see it is pretty used, but I feel like to some extent I have to babysit this because who knows how long I have before this grows mold. And I like the cream more than I like the powder, but I'm gonna hold on to this one as well. This I actually haven't used at all, but I'm going to. So this needs to go into I keep a bin in my drawers of products that I haven't used yet. I'm going to put this in that drawer so that I remember to use it. And these 2 are actually really beautiful. This is the Revolution Beauty cream bronzer in dark. It just blends out so well, and I accidentally picked up dark, but it is actually a really great color for me. And then the NARS Laguna 3 cream bronzer, beautiful bronzer, no problems with this bronzer. Love this bronzer. You can see it's also been used. There's quite a bit of a dip in there, so I will be keeping all these. So of the bronzers that we had, again, we had 36 bronzers. These are the ones I'm getting rid of. 8 bronzers. I still feel like that's so much. I know that one of them will be gone by the end of the year. I look at the stack here, and the only 2 I can anticipate getting rid of is potentially these 2. But I still do think I need more time with this one, and this one I'm gonna go through my collection and see if I have a bronzer that's nearly this color. I don't think I do though. Like, this is just such a different, interesting color. It's more yellow based than red based or orange based. So I don't think like decluttering 8 is bad news. I think that, this is a good, fair amount to declutter. I still feel like this is a lot, but I'm happy with decluttering 8.